Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Am I audible enough to everybody?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Okay, good. Nigamakkalpatarorgalitam phalam sudamkat amrita pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam prabhurastha bhuvibhavkaha Narayanam namaskritya naran chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiraye Krishnaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Naishtiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so welcome back. I have been given the responsibility of dealing with the first few chapters of fifth canto. Today we will try to cover about 20 odd shlokas of the first chapter. So before generally getting into fifth canto, does anybody know what is the title of fifth canto?
Creative impetus.
Yeah, creative impetus. What does that mean? What does it, which aspect of the 10 topics of Bhagavatam it is? Which aspect of the 10 topics of Bhagavatam? We know we have 10 topics of Bhagavatam, right?
Yes.
Talks about the sthanam.
Yeah, generally people think that it talks about sthanam. There's nothing wrong in it because some of the acharyas have explained that it talks about sthanam. But the creative impetus is not sthanam. Creative impetus is not sthanam. Creative impetus is uti. So, atra sarga visargascha sthanam poshanam utaya. According to Prabhupada's classification or Prabhupada's title for different cantos, first canto is sarga, second canto is visarga, third canto is sthanam, fourth canto is poshanam, and fifth canto is uti. Then sixth canto manvantra, seventh canto ishanatata, eighth canto virodha, ninth canto mukti, 10th canto ashraya. Of course, everybody accepts 10th canto as ashraya. But there is difference in different acharyas naming the cantos differently. Of course, all 10 topics are present in, more or less present in all the cantos. But still, acharyas have chosen the names for different cantos in different way. So, if you actually see the definition of the 10 topics in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavatam itself gives the definition of the 10 topics. In the second canto, in the 10th chapter, this definition is given of the topics, the different topics. There is the listing of the topics, which I'm sure you all memorized, and then there is definition of the topics. Let's see. Bhagavatam, chapter. Here. So, Stitir Vaikuntha Vijayaha, Oshanam Tat Anugrahaha, Manvantarani Saddharma, Utaya Karma Vasanaha. So, this is the definition which is given for different items. In this, we are now interested in Uti, Utaya Karma Vasana. If you see Utaya, the impetus to work, Karma Vasana, desire for fruity work. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruity work. This is the definition which is given in the second canto. So, Prabhupada calls fourth canto as creative impetus. Then if you try to understand the creative impetus, why is Karma Vasana, if you actually go through the different sections of fifth canto, we can see that there is a clear thread of such discussion. In the beginning of fifth canto, we have a unique situation. The entire fourth canto has one prominent message. The entire fourth canto has one prominent message. What is that message? What is the message of fourth canto? For all the kings, different big kings in fourth canto, all of them finally they do something. What is that? What do they do? This is the problem with the Zoom class. I ask a question and you start wondering if the students are there. Or
they left home and then they went for the forest.
Yeah, correct. Thank you. So Zoom class is always like this. You ask a question and then you start wondering if the students are there or not there, or you're just talking to names. Anyway, we are in a unique situation. Okay, so they left home and they went to forest. And in the beginning of fifth canto, a person who is in forest, he comes back home, which is Priyavrata. So from there, then we have Agnidra, then we have Maharaja Nabi, then we have Rishabhadev, then we have the story of Jadabharata and Praghugana, and then we have the description of the various dvipas and the prayers of the residents of the various dvipas, and then we have the description of the hellish planets, etc. This is more or less the topics which are dealt with in the fifth canto. So the various situations in which the living entity places himself in various planetary systems, or in various situations, or in various positions of influence, etc., of enjoyment or suffering, a living entity places himself is simply a function of the impetus which actually impels the living entity to act. So the material creation itself has got nothing to do with Krishna. Krishna is very happy with the spiritual world. He doesn't need the material world. So in material world, various planetary systems are there, various positions of enjoyment are there, and various types of arrangement in various planetary systems are there, which you will all study. Some of them for enjoyment, some of them for suffering. All these things are there simply because the conditioned soul desires to enjoy and suffer in various ways. So in order to facilitate the enjoyment and suffering of the conditioned soul, then these planetary systems are there. So therefore, sometimes even though fifth canto is classified as Sthanam, Prabhupada actually classifies fifth canto as Uti or Utaya, because the impetus is the reason why which the planets are there. The planets are there for no other reason. Because there is a certain impetus to enjoy in a certain way, therefore the different planetary systems are there. So our environment is simply a function of our consciousness. Whatever is our consciousness, according to our consciousness will be our environment. And also within any environment, we can be Krishna conscious. So these two things. Fifth canto actually teaches us both these things. That whatever is our environment, that's simply a function of our consciousness. That's the first thing we are taught in fifth canto. We have a certain consciousness, and the consciousness becomes the cause of a certain environment. But also, it is true, it is equally true, that in any environment, we can remain Krishna conscious. The environment is not at all a factor in being completely Krishna conscious. So in the beginning of fifth canto, we are presented with a unique situation, which is generally I call it as Priyavrata's dilemma, a very, very unique situation. And that situation teaches us a lot of things. Priyavrata's dilemma is sometimes our own dilemma, and it has many subject matters to be taught. Priyavrata is he has been practicing austerities by the direction of Narada Muni, and from beginning he was not interested in ruling the kingdom. So he just left everything to his younger brother Uttanapad, and then he just went off to the forest to practice austerities and celibacy under the direction of Narada Muni, who is a great devotee. So now there is a crisis in the universal management. And the crisis is that the line of kings who ruled the universe, it has come to an end with the Prachetas, because the Prachetas were having Daksha as their son. And Daksha was not interested in ruling. He was interested in simply increasing the population. So therefore, he just went to do austerities so that he can become a Prajapati and he can just increase the population. So faced with that situation, faced with the fact that there are no rulers after the Prachetas left for the forest, then Swayambhu Munu comes with a unique proposal to Devrata that come back from forest. It's a big lesson for us. It actually teaches us that devotional service is not stereotype. It's not that we can mechanically do devotional service with a formula, because the fourth canto seemed to present a formula. Just get out of your house and then go to forest. And now in the beginning of fifth canto, there's a person who is sitting in forest, and he is being guided by none other than the most exalted personality, is Narada Muni. It's not like guided by some simple guy. He is guided by the most exalted personality, Narada Muni. And now, in spite of all that situation, he has to go back from forest. So devotional service is not about forest, going to forest or going back from forest. Devotional service is much more than going to forest or going back from forest. Of course, the secret of devotional service will be discussed in the first few verses of this chapter, and also at the same time, is also described in the further pastimes, which is Rishabhadev's pastime, and especially in Jadabharata's pastime or in Bharatmara's pastime. This is elaborately discussed. That what actually it means to quit, to go away, what actually it means to go away or to quit, will be elaborately discussed. It's a very important topic. It's a very important topic for those who are serious in advancing devotional service. To understand that our environment is simply a function of consciousness. Of course, it's not a new concept. Krishna explains this in Bhagavad Gita. Yam va pismaran bhavam tejatante kalaivaram tam tam yevaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. That whatever state of mind one leaves one's body, the son of Kunti, he attains that state without doubt. So we are put in various environments, and sometimes we think that our environment is controlling us. But what we fail to understand is that our consciousness is controlling our environment, and our consciousness is manifesting a certain type of environment. And if we actually figure this out, then we can also figure out that in whatever environment we are, we can simply be Krishna conscious. Then we can make it out. Then we can figure it out. So that's what Brahma will tell Narada. That Brahma will tell Devrata. Don't worry about your environment. Just focus on being Krishna conscious. We'll also see how difficult it is. It's not like it's easier said than that. But that's what it is. That in Kali Yuga, we are left in a certain environment, and the environment has certain characteristics. And we chose to take birth in Kali Yuga. We're not forced to take birth in Kali Yuga. Because of our different activities, because of our desire and consciousness, we have ended up here. So now we need to take responsibility and then try to see how we can remain Krishna conscious in this crazy Kali Yuga. So that's the subject matter of fifth canto. That there are different types of planetary systems. There are different exalted personalities in these different types of planetary systems. And all of them in their prayers just give one message. The message is, don't desire anything other than Krishna consciousness. Simply desire to be Krishna conscious. Get out of this material existence. Get out of this idea of being an enjoyer. So, so this little introduction on the topic of fifth canto. Always like to explain the topic. Any questions, comments?
No, Prabhuji.
Okay, so we will here it is. So have all of you read the translations of all the verses?
I have.
Yes, sir.
So can I have a show of hand by Zoom? How many of you have read the translations? Can you on to? No more hand is going on. Only one, two. Rest of them did. Okay. 3. Okay, I'll repeat the question again. How many of you have read the translations of all the verses?
I have.
Can you please raise your hand? Okay. A little bit more hands up. So I think Zoom MI classroom is not a student, so we can easily. Okay, we have how many students? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. About 10 students. Out of 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, we have a thin majority. Okay. So since we are in a democracy country, then we let the majority prevail. So if there is an important translation, we'll read. Otherwise we'll just read the sections of purports that are highlighted. So do you have a reading order amongst yourself? Do you have a reading order?
I don't know, Prabhuji, what do you mean reading order?
You'll have to set it up, I think.
Okay, so who will read first, who will read next, like that? That's called reading order. Okay. I will ask Damodar to set it up next for the next class. Now it is free for all. Anybody can read. Please read what is highlighted.
Shall I read?
Yes, sir.
In the 4th canto, Srila Sukadeva Goswami explains that Narada Muni perfectly instructed King Priyavrat about the mission of human life. The mission of human life is to realize oneself and then gradually go back home, back to Godhead. Since Narada Muni instructed the king fully on this subject, why did he again enter household life, which is the main cause of material bondage?
Yeah, please continue to read. Highlighted. Only highlighted.
Okay. Why is it wrong to enjoy household life? The reply is that in the household life, one becomes bound by the results of fruitive activities. Shall I read the green also?
Yeah. Whatever is highlighted, we can read.
The essence of household life is sense enjoyment, and as long as one engrosses his mind in working hard for sense enjoyment, one becomes bound by the reactions of fruitive activities. Such a life is called Swarupa Vismrita, forgetfulness of one's real constitutional position. King Parikshit was thus astonished that the great King Priyavrat, although trained in the principles of Naishtika Brahmacharya, entered household life. There are different types of satisfaction. Karmis are satisfied in their fruitive activities. Jnanis are satisfied to merge into the effulgence of Brahman, and devotees are satisfied to engage in the Lord's service. The Lord is self-satisfied because he is fully opulent, and one who is satisfied by serving him is called Bhagavata Atma Rama. When one is satisfied in family life, he is doomed because he must already have forgotten his relationship with the Lord. If one falls into this well, his spiritual death is assured.
So this is his question that Priyavrato Bhagavata Atmanam Katam Mune Grihe Aramata Yanmulaha Karma Bandha Prabhavaha. So the word Prabhavaha means that it actually hands over the defeat of human life. A person who is self-satisfied by the dint of practice of devotional service, why would he actually enter into family life? Doesn't make any sense. That what would cause him to enter into family life? Because generally it is seen that a person who is unable to satisfy himself with devotional service, he enters into family life generally, because he is looking for some sense enjoyment, and that sense enjoyment is based on piety, or he wants to enjoy in a certain way, and then he wants to make that dovetail that enjoying tendency in Krishna consciousness. So then basically his impetus to enjoy pushes him to family life. And it may be done sinfully, it may be done on the basis of piety, or it may be done in a proper Krishna conscious way, which is dovetailing the enjoying tendency in Krishna consciousness. So it could be done in any of these ways. But the fact remains that he entered family life because he had some impetus to enjoy. So therefore, such life is called Swarupa Vismriti, because one tends to forget one's own position. The householder thinks that he is the lord and master of all his surveys. He is the master of the house, or she is the mistress of the house, and then everything belongs to them. They control everything. All these different types of things. Especially for a man, for a woman, it's a Vedic injunction that she should get married, and she should serve her husband. And by serving her husband, if he is a great devotee, then the woman naturally becomes, she advances in devotional service. So for a woman, marriage is not an option, according to Vedic system at least. She has to get married. But for a man, that's not so. He can perfectly remain Naishtika Brahmachari. And it is understandable that if he wants to get married, and then he goes to Gurukula just to get trained in such a way that he becomes a Grahastha, then it's a different story. But in case of Priyavrata, he wanted to remain an Naishtika Brahmachari. So specifically, he was being trained by Narad Muni in Naishtika Brahmacharya. So why would he do this? Why would he do this? It's a suicidal policy of entering into family life. So then he is asking that even if he entered into family life, what kind of life he would have lived? Because it's not possible for a devotee to actually enjoy a family life. So he is saying that na nuna mukta sanganam tadarshana vijashava griheshu abhinniveshoyam punsam bhavitam arhati. That how he can have attachment? On what basis he will develop attachment? Because he is a devotee. On what basis he will remain a householder? So this is his next question. So please read the purport.
Thus, for a bhakta to become attached to family affairs is impossible. Since a bhakta and his associates are liberated, everyone is searching after ananda or bliss, but in the material world, there can never be any bliss. It is only possible in devotional service. Attachment for family affairs and devotional service are incompatible.
Incompatible. That how can he actually do? How he can get into this, and then he is asking that okay, even if he wanted to get involved in family life, but he was being guided by someone who is so great that he has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then how this can happen? So he is asking in various ways, he is asking that how did Priyavrata end up taking up family life? Okay, please read.
The distinction between family life and spiritual life can be experienced by any person who has undergone the tribulations of living with a family. One who comes under the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord never becomes attracted by the activities of family life. Shall I continue?
So
Agree.
then,
I will. Can I read?
yeah. So
Oh.
yeah, just wait. So then,
Agriyavrata, one who has taken a vow to execute family duties, has no chance to
become Krishna conscious.
To become Krishna conscious. Oh, where is it? Okay. Where are we? I don't find this following part.
This is because
this is because most of Griyavratas are guided by sense gratification and therefore gradually glide down to the darkest regions of material existence. Adanta, Gobiya, Visatam, Tamishram. How can they possibly become perfect in Krishna consciousness?
So since it is a contradictory behavior, then he rightly put forward this question in front of his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, that how this is possible that he is also a great devotee, he is being trained for Naishtika Brahmacharya, and then he leaves Naishtika Brahmacharya, and then he enters into family life, and then he still remains a great devotee. What is this? Looks very, very controversial. It's not possible. How does it how is it possible? And then Sukadeva Goswami agrees his proposal. He says, Badam. Badam means what you are telling is correct. This is correct. It's not that you have asked a question which is inappropriate. You have asked an appropriate question. Bhagavata Uttama Slokasya Srimad Charanarvinda Makaranda Rasa Avisheta Chetaso Bhagavata Paramahamsa Devya Katham Kinchit Antaraya Vihitam. So how did he get into this? How did he get into this? That this is something which needs to be understood. So he gives a proper answer. He says that one who is attached to the nectarian honey of Lord's lotus feet, whose minds have always absorbed in his glories, may sometime be checked by some impediment, but he still never gives up his exalted position he has acquired. So in a devotee's life, there may be some impediment, and that impediment may cause a situation where he becomes challenged in his practice of Krishna consciousness. But once he has developed this taste for Krishna consciousness, then it should be understood that such impediment will not pose will not pose a grave danger to him. And Prabhupada actually discusses two types of impediment which may cause one to face some challenges in devotional service. Okay, please read the purport.
One who, okay, Sri Sukadeva Goswami accepted both of the king's proposition that a person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness cannot embrace materialistic life again, and that one who has embraced materialistic life cannot take up Krishna consciousness at any stage of his existence. Also accepting both these statements, Sukadeva Goswami qualified them by saying that a person who has once absorbed his mind in
the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead
may sometimes be influenced by impediments, but he still does not give up his exalted devotional position. Two kinds of impediments to devotional service. The first is an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. This is called Vaishnava Parad.
Since Krishna consciousness is eternal.
Since Krishna consciousness is eternal,
it cannot be destroyed altogether, but advancement may be checked for time being. Sometimes, however, the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee desires to impede one's devotional service. For example, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha were formerly Jaya and Vijaya, the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. But by the desire of the Lord, they became enemies for 3 lives. Thus, the desire of the Lord is another kind of impediment. In both cases, the pure devotee, once advanced in Krishna consciousness, cannot be lost. Krishna consciousness is perfect and eternal, therefore it cannot be lost in any circumstances. In the verse, the word Sivatamam is very significant. Sivatamam means the most auspicious. Devotional path is so auspicious that a devotee cannot be lost under any circumstance. Okay. So, Prabhupada actually discusses 2 types of impediments which can be caused. One is by Vaishnava Parad, and the other is by the will of the Lord or by the will of a pure devotee. Some difficulty may be caused. Vaishnava Parad, it can cause a problem for a long time if the Vaishnava Parad is not rectified properly. But if it is rectified, then very quickly the impediment which is created by the Vaishnava Parad will actually go away. Because the person has fallen at the feet of the Vaishnava whom he has offended, and he has begged for forgiveness, and that person is also forgiven, wholehearted. So therefore, when it is properly rectified, then Vaishnava Parad, the effect of Vaishnava Parad, the impediment in advancement of devotional service, which is created by Vaishnava Parad, it vanishes very quickly. But if it is not properly rectified, then for a long time, the effect of Vaishnava Parad may stunt the advancement of a devotee, especially in devotional service. But the other type of impediment, which is created by the will of the Lord or by the will of a pure devotee, is simply helps one to increase one's attachment to the Lord. And we will see this, especially in Priyavrata's case, and also we will see this in the case. We will distinctly see this in the case of Bharat Maharaj, because the Lord actually caused the impediment in the life of Bharat Maharaj to show that even though something may look right in the eyes of or through mundane understanding, one should be fixed in the path of devotional service without being deviated by such mundaneness. And that's something which we'll learn from Bharat's pastime and we'll see. But in order to demonstrate that, the Lord simply used the impediment which was created by his sweet will in Bharat Maharaj's life. But the result of that is, as we can see, that Bharat Maharaj got firmly attached to Krishna's lotus feet. So when the impediment is caused by the Supreme Lord or the will of a pure devotee, then such impediment, the result of such impediment is increased attachment to the Lord. So in that sense, in one sense, it's positive. But in any case, devotional service cannot be lost. So that's the whole understanding. Okay, please read.
By the order of the Lord, a perfect devotee sometimes comes to this material world like an ordinary human being. Because of his previous practice, such a perfect devotee naturally becomes attached to devotional service, apparently without cause.
Okay, please read.
Despite all kinds of impediments due to surrounding circumstances, he automatically perseveres in his devotional service and gradually advances until he once again becomes perfect. Bilvamangal Thakur had been an advanced devotee in his previous life, but in his next life, he became greatly fallen and was attached to a prostitute. Suddenly, however, his entire behavior was changed by the words of the very prostitute who had so much attracted him, and he became a great devotee. These apparent contradictions are resolved in the life of a devotee by the grace of the Supreme Lord, and therefore a devotee is never bereft of his position on the path of liberation, which is described in this verse as Shivatamam Padavam.
So a devotee is always auspiciously situated. This is called Sivatamam Padavim. That his life is always auspicious, even though sometimes it may look as if that he is impeded in advancement of devotional service, but his life is always auspicious. So now Sukadeva Goswami is explaining the situation by which this strange situation has arisen. So here Sukadeva Goswami says, although the order of his father could not be rejected, the prince did not welcome it. Thus, he very conscientiously raised the question of whether he might be diverted from devotional service by accepting this responsibility of ruling the world. So he had a valid concern. His father came up with a valid proposal. He said, there is nobody to rule. You are the king's son. You have to take responsibility. So you please come, you get married, you rule the kingdom. So all these days I did not disturb you. For a very long time, because from Priyavrata to Prechatas, this long time had gone. And all these days, Swayambhu Muna had not disturbed him. So he had not disturbed you. But now is a time where I have to disturb you. So you please come. You please do what you have to do. So then Priyavrata knew that his father is putting up a proposal which is reasonable by any consideration. But he had his own doubt that why should I take this? Why should I take this? So Prabhupada says that this is the symptom of a great liberated devotee. Okay, so please read.
Even though engaged in worldly affairs, he does not take pleasure in them, but remains always absorbed in the Lord's service. While thus serving the Lord, he deals externally with worldly affairs without being affected. For example, although he has no attraction for his children, he cares for them and educates them to become devotees. Similarly, he speaks to his wife with affectionate words, but he is not attached to her. In the same way, although a devotee may enter family life and act very affectionately towards his wife and children, he is never attached to these activities. If one has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master, the essence of all Vedic knowledge is revealed to him. A devotee always thinks of the Lord continuously while chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. The words Krishna and Hare immediately remind him of all Lord's activities. Just as an ordinary man always engages his mind in material activities, a devotee always engages his mind in spiritual activities.
So Prabhupada starts giving the resolution to this contradiction. The contradiction is that how could Priyavrata accept family life, because he is already being trained by an exalted personality who is Narada Muni. How could he accept family life? How could he be interested in accepting family life? So Prabhupada actually starts, because previously Prabhupada was also raising such questions. Prabhupada prominently wrote in the previous purport one statement that enjoying in family life and Krishna consciousness, they are not compatible to each other. So now Prabhupada actually starts giving the resolution that how a householder devotee should actually conduct himself. That he has to do his duties nicely, being affectionate to the children, being affectionate to the wife, etc. At the same time, he should remain detached. He should remain detached. So that is how it is. So because the situation was a very tricky situation, and Narada and Swayambhu Munu, they could not come to an agreement. They both are Priyavrata's authorities, and both authorities are having two different views. Narada is of the view that Priyavrata should simply practice Naishtika Brahmacharya. He should simply continue his devotional service. There is no need for him to go back and oblige his father's request. And Swayambhu Manu is of the impression that Priyavrata should simply come back and take responsibility for universal management, because that is also the Lord's service, to actually provide opportunity for the conditioned souls to go back to Godhead. So that's also a service which is being rendered to the Lord. So he was saying that you come back, and Narada Muni was telling that no need to go back. And Priyavrata was asking that what is the guarantee that if I come, I will not get stuck. I will not throw away whatever Krishna consciousness I have gained. And since there is a deadlock, then Lord Brahma, who is interested in seeing the universal creation progressing, and who is interested in everybody's welfare, so he came down on his own to solve the problem, because he is everyone's authority. He is Narada Muni's authority because he is Narada's father. He is Swayambhu Munu's authority because Swayambhu Munu came from him, even though he is not treated as his son. And of course, he is also Priyavrata's authority, because he is, like, in one sense, his grandfather. So then Lord Brahma came, and here he is addressed as Bhagavan. Lord Brahma is addressed in this verse as Bhagavan. So Prabhupada explains why Brahma is addressed as Bhagavan. Okay, please read.
He is also called Bhagavan. Although generally Bhagavan refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Sometimes great personalities such as demigods like Lord Brahma, Narada or Lord Shiva are also addressed as Bhagavan because they carry out the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nivritti Marga is the path of negating sense enjoyment, and Pravritti Marga is the path by which the living entities are given a chance to enjoy and at the same time are directed in such a way that they can go back home, back to Godhead. Brahmaloka usually refers to the spiritual world. The abode of Lord Brahma is Satyaloka, but because Lord Brahma resides there, it is also sometimes called Brahmaloka.
Okay, so here Prabhupada actually explains that Brahma actually came. Prabhupada gives the indication that Brahma actually came to carry out the purpose of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's exactly what Brahma will also say to Priyavrata. And he came to pacify Priyavrata, and he came to fulfill the will of the Lord. So when Brahma came, then naturally everybody worshipped him because he is everybody's authority. So naturally everybody worshipped him. And after accepting everybody's worship, then Priyavrata Brahma looked at Priyavrata and he smiled. So why did Brahma smile? Now that is explained by the Acharyas. Prabhupada actually explains why Brahma smiled. Okay, please read.
At that time, Lord Brahma, the original person of this universe, felt compassion for Priyavrata and looking upon him with a smiling face, spoke to him as follows. Lord Brahma knew that Narada's instructions were very impressive. Therefore, unless Lord Brahma personally went to Gandhamadana hill to request Priyavrata, Brahma knew that Prince Priyavrata would not accept his father's order. His smile and compassionate features also indicated that although Brahma would request Priyavrata to accept household life, Priyavrata would not be out of touch with devotional service. By the blessings of a Vaishnava, everything is possible. Priyavrata was the grandson of Lord Brahma, and as joking competition sometimes takes place between grandson and grandfather, in this case also Priyavrata was determined to remain in meditation, whereas Brahma was determined that he would rule the universe. Thus, Lord Brahma's affectionate smile and glance meant, my dear Priyavrata, you have decided not to accept household life, but I have decided to convince you that you must accept it.
So Brahma's smile had some multiple reasons. So first reason was that Brahma actually understood Priyavrata's concern and he was sympathetic towards the concern. That Priyavrata was genuinely concerned that what will happen to him if he simply accepted his father's proposal to rule the kingdom, enter into family life, and then do whatever has to be done. So then he was thinking, what will happen to all the advancement in Krishna consciousness, which actually I have received by the mercy of Narad Muni. Where will all this go? Will all this just be thrown to waste? So that was his serious concern. And Brahma's smile assured him that that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That he is going to be benefited by this experience of taking up the family life. And then the second aspect of the smile was Brahma knew that even though Priyavrata is determined to continue his position, Brahma is going to break his determination by his own determination, which is supported by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, also he smiled. So there are two reasons for Brahma's smile. That's why he smiled. And then Brahma spoke. Okay, please read.
Do not be jealous of the Supreme Lord, who is beyond our experimental measurements. But of the 12 great authorities in devotional service, 4, Lord Brahma himself, his son Narada, Swayambhuva Manu, and Lord Shiva were present before Priyavrata. The power, glory, and potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can never be diminished. In the Ishopanishad, the Lord is described as Apapa Vidha, which indicates that he is never affected by anything materially considered sinful. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam describes the Supreme Personality of Godhead as being so powerful that nothing we might consider abominable can affect him. An example sometimes given to explain the position of the Supreme Lord is that of the sun, which evaporates urine from the earth, but it is never affected by contamination. The Supreme Lord can never be accused of doing anything wrong. When Lord Brahma went to induce Priyavrata to accept the responsibility for ruling the universe, he did not go whimsically. he was following the dictations of the Supreme Lord. The more a living entity is purified by devotional service, the more he comes in direct contact with Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Thus, Lord Brahma first advised Priyavrata to hear his words with attention and without envy. All these authorities are certainly very powerful, but they do not have the power to disobey the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He first wanted to dispel any suspicions that he might be acting as Priyavrata's enemy.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. It is very significant that actually Brahma makes the statement that don't be jealous of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is very important. And also he said that he is beyond our experimental measurements. So here Brahma was giving him two messages. One message is that whimsically acting or acting against the will of the Supreme Lord is not going to cause any good for Priyavrata. This is the first message he wanted to give. The second message he wanted to give to Priyavrata was that that he should simply accept the authoritative opinion of what is good for him. So Priyavrata may say that yes, I am accepting authoritative opinion. I am simply accepting the opinion of Narada Muni. But Brahma is saying that in order to show that whatever I am going to say is authoritative, I have actually come with another Mahajan who is Lord Shiva. So now we have four Mahajans: Narada, Swayambhu Manu, Brahma, and Lord Shiva. So there are four. So three of them are going to speak one language, and one is going to speak another language, or one spoke another language. So this is very important for us to understand that there could be difference amongst authorities, and we have to expect this, that there could be difference among authorities. But that doesn't mean that one authority is superior, another authority is inferior. All of them are Mahajans, all of them are great souls, but still they had some difference. Like Swayambhu Manu was an authority himself. Narada was an authority himself. And they both had difference. And now they are actually looking up to Brahma to resolve the difference between them. And Brahma is telling Priyavrata that in order to receive instruction, one has to be non-envious. That's very, very important. One has to have faith in authority and one has to be non-envious. Without faith in authority and without being non-envious, it's impossible to actually accept instructions from authority. It's a very important thing. It's a very, very basic need to accept instruction from authority. Therefore, one has to surrender to authority. Without surrendering to authority, one cannot get instructed by authority. The authorities refuse to instruct without such surrender. Therefore, that's why we have the whole system of initiation, that one actually surrenders to the spiritual master. One has developed sufficient faith in the spiritual master that he can actually take shiksha from the spiritual master, and one can accept instruction from the spiritual master and then follow it wholeheartedly. So he's saying, don't be jealous of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Means that whatever Krishna decides for a jiva, it is not wrong. Whatever Krishna has destined for the jiva, be it path of suffering or be it path of enjoyment, it is simply it's simply infallible justice. So there is no question of blaming the Supreme Lord for what is happening in our life. That constitutes jealousy. Or there's no question of blaming others. Like whenever we feel that I am going through unjustified suffering, that means we may actually blame somebody else that, oh, I'm okay, but I'm going through some unjustified suffering because of such and such person. But we are actually blaming the Supreme Lord because we are actually saying that the system of the Lord is not infallible. It's just fallible justice. Means that Krishna doesn't know. One second. We are simply saying that Krishna doesn't know what is right for us. He has actually introduced a character in our life, and that character is giving us some suffering which is not justified. I am not supposed to have this suffering. This particular character is coming and giving some suffering to me, and this is not at all justified. That's not the right understanding. That's why here Brahma is telling Priyavrata that don't think that I have been introduced to give you some suffering. That I have come, I'm going to speak to you something, and whatever I'm going to speak to you is going to cause some suffering to you, and therefore I'm simply inducing some suffering in your life for no reason. He actually points out that such an attitude to blame is simply being jealous on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond our experimental measures. Sometimes the example is given that, okay, the same example is coming later. Okay. Okay, please read. One cannot avoid the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not by the strength of severe austerity and exalted Vedic education or power of mystic yoga, physical prowess or intellectual activities. Nor can one use his power of religion, his mental opulence, or any other means, either by himself or with the help of others, to defy the orders of the Supreme Lord. That's not possible for any living being, from Brahma down to the ant. It's a very, very important statement which Brahma makes. Because there are karmis, there are jnanis, there are yogis, and all of them are trying to make their own way of success. They think that they can actually, by dint of their austerity or by education or by mystic power or by various ways, they can actually achieve success without depending on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's wrong. It cannot happen. They cannot achieve success. So here also, Brahma is pointing out to Priyavrata that don't think that I'm doing the right thing. I am practicing Naishtika Brahmacharya. I am doing the right thing. And by doing this right thing, by my practice of Naishtika Brahmacharya, I can attain success. I don't have to worry about following the order of Brahma or following the order of my father. Don't think like that. He's saying don't think like that, because it's impossible for anyone, including Brahma, Narada, Priyavrata, or anybody, to forego the order of Lord Vishnu. So basically, he wanted to convey that he's not going to whimsically tell him something. He's simply going to relay to him what is the desire of Lord Sri Vishnu in his case. Okay, please read the purport.
In the Brahat Aranyaka Upanishad 3.8.9, my dear Gargi, everything is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the sun, the moon, and other controllers and demigods like Lord Brahma and King Indra are all under his control. Priyavrata might argue that Lord Brahma was requesting him to accept family life and the responsibility for ruling a kingdom, although Narada Muni had advised him not to enter household life and be entangled in material affairs. Under the circumstances, the use of the word Manishaya is very appropriate, for it indicates that since both Narada Muni and Lord Brahma are authorized to give instruction, Priyavrata should neglect neither of them, but should use his intelligence to follow the advice of both. Anashaktasya vishayan yatartham upayunjataha nirbandhaha Krishna sambandha yukta vairagyam uchyate. Becoming a family man or king in the material world is not harmful if one accepts everything for Krishna's service. That necessitates clear intelligence. That which is created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be false, but using it for enjoyment is. Regardless of one's circumstances, favorable or unfavorable, one should use everything to serve the Supreme Lord. That is the perfect way to use one's intelligence.
Yeah, so he actually, Prabhupada actually explains very nicely that how both of them are correct. Like Narada is telling, don't get entangled in family life. He's correct. Brahma is telling that please accept family life and accept the rulership of this universe. He's also correct. So accepting family life in a proper way does not mean entanglement in family life, or accepting response or utilizing the worldly resources necessarily does not mean exploiting them for sense gratification. The Mayavadis are paranoid of the worldly resources because they simply see worldly resources as a trap. They think that if I simply take up these worldly resources in my hand, then they will actually cause karma bandhana and they will simply bind me to the body. So therefore, their main idea is that the world has to be rejected as false, Jagat Mithya. But Vaishnavas do not consider the world as false or the worldly resources as false. They clearly understand the tendency to enjoy it is false, because the jiva is not the enjoyer. The jiva is supposed to be enjoyed, and his enjoyment is being subordinate to Krishna or being enjoyed by Krishna constitutes his enjoyment. So therefore, whatever is there, it should be without rejecting it. Whatever comes in our hand, whether it is favorable situation or unfavorable situation, without rejoicing or without lamenting, one should simply utilize every situation to progress in Krishna consciousness. That's it. That's what one is supposed to do. That is the essence of the understanding of Yukta Vairagya. Anasaktascha Vishayan Yadarham Upayinjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Muchate. Anasaktascha Vishayan means that one should remain detached from the material worldly affairs or worldly enjoyment. So that's the basic requirement for Yukta Vairagya, that one should remain detached. That is Anasaktascha Vishayan. Yadarham Upayinjataha. But there are these resources which are in front of us, whether we like or not, they are available. Like body is a resource, it's available. It has various tools like the karmendriyas, jnanendriyas. They are all active, they are working, and they are functioning in a certain way. So what to do? You cannot just reject it as false. You cannot say, okay, my eyes are false, my ears are false, my nose is false, and whatever I am smelling, the fragrance, that is also false. It's not possible. The Jnanis try to do it. They keep telling Jagat Mithya, Jagat Mithya, Jagat Mithya, till the time one of the senses, they get attached to a strong impetus from some sense object. And then they lose everything. Whatever Jagat Mithya, they lose. And then they simply fall into that Mithya, the so-called Mithya Jagat, they claim, they simply fall into that. And then it's a whole tragedy which follows. So, but here we are taught by Rupa Goswami that whatever resource is there, that we should simply find a way as to how to utilize that in Krishna's service. So that's it. Nirbandha. Nirbandha means that in the process of utilizing it in Krishna service, one should not still get attached to it. Because sometimes we may be detached, but if we get something and if we utilize in Krishna service, we may become attached to it. And we may think that our service has become conditional to that facility. It's not like the service is conditional to the facility. Facility is there, incidental. Its facility is incidental. Service is eternal. So that should be understood very clearly. But whatever the incidental facility we have, we should simply utilize it in our service. And Krishna Sambandhe, we should actually see everything as belonging to Krishna, not as belonging to us, that I am actually, this belongs to me, I am giving it to Krishna. No, the reverse is true. This belongs to Krishna, Krishna has given it to me. And if I utilize it back in Krishna's service, that means I am intelligent, because it belongs to Krishna. If we think that it belongs to me, I am giving it to Krishna, that's foolish. That's foolish. Prabhupada says that if a person thinks that the money in the Bank of America belongs to him, that means he's a thief. So if we think that the resources of this material world belong to us, and we are actually giving it to Krishna, the money belongs to me, I am giving it to Krishna. This is nonsense, because money belongs to Krishna. Money is Lakshmi. Lakshmi belongs to Narayana. She doesn't belong to us. Narayana has simply left some mercy of Lakshmi Devi with us. That doesn't mean that the Lakshmi belongs to us. Lakshmi always belongs to Narayana. The moment we think that Lakshmi belongs to us, that means we are becoming Ravana. Ravana is thinking, oh, Sita should belong to me. Why Sita should belong to Rama? So like that. So therefore, Prabhupada says that necessitates clear intelligence. That we should have clear intelligence to actually properly understand that regardless of one circumstance, favorable or unfavorable, one should use everything in Krishna service. That how to do it, that's explained. That one should remain detached. One should simply accept facilities which are useful in Krishna service. One should remain detached from these facilities while actually using these facilities to serve Krishna. And one should always consciously consider that all these facilities simply belong to Krishna. So all these four aspects constitute this exalted concept called Yukta Vairagya, which is given by Rupa Goswami. It's a very, very important concept because in Vaishnava philosophy, we accept that this material world is true but temporary. So whatever is true, it has to be simply connected to the absolute truth. Then it makes sense. So then here Priyavrata, Brahma is telling Priyavrata that whatever comes your way, you have simply earned it. You have simply earned it. So today, all these days, Brahmacharya training came in your way because you earned it. You had this karma, which actually made it possible for you to practice this long Brahmacharya. And now you are your own reactions of work has put you in this circumstance where you have to accept family life, you have to accept ruling the kingdom, all these things. So whatever one goes through in one's life, especially as material experience, one should be satisfied with it. Whether it is good, bad, ugly, one should simply be satisfied with it because by such satisfaction, one will remain detached from the idea of enjoying this body. Otherwise, one will always be disturbed by the idea of enjoying the body. Okay, please read.
Every living entity who has come to this material world has come here for material enjoyment, but according to his own karma activities, he must accept a certain type of body given to him by material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not a fact, however, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives direction to certain living entities in one way and other living entities in another way. The truth is that every living entity has a certain desire, and the Supreme Lord gives him a chance to fulfill it. We must therefore.
So yes. That is the truth. The truth is that we have some karma vasana, we have some desire which exists within us, and that desire is actually manifesting as prarabdha, or that which we have to go through, which is prarabdha karma. The karma which we have to go through is called prarabdha karma. That which we have to go through is our prarabdha. So therefore, that desire or that prarabdha karma is manifesting in various ways, which is actually putting us into different type of circumstances, which sometimes is favorable, which sometimes unfavorable. But from a materialistic point of view, they may be favorable or unfavorable. But there is no circumstance which is actually unfavorable for practice of devotional service. Every circumstance is favorable. Every circumstance is favorable. There's no circumstances which are unfavorable. So therefore, it is important for everyone to understand that we should be satisfied with our material situation, and at the same time, we should utilize whatever situation we have simply to progress in Krishna consciousness. While it is true that our prarabdha will manifest in various ways, as long as we have this body, our prarabdha will keep manifesting in various ways. But the same prarabdha can be nullified by the practice of devotional service, because by the practice of devotional service, a prarabdha is generally a prarabdha is supposed to give a sense of happiness or a sense of suffering. That's what a prarabdha is supposed to give. So when the prarabdha gives that sense of happiness or sense of suffering, that means according to whatever prarabdha it is, that means it is successful. That prarabdha we are experiencing the effect of that prarabdha. But if the same prarabdha, whatever situation it has created, if it is simply being utilized to progress in Krishna consciousness, then it is understood that the prarabdha is nullified, because the prarabdha has neither given that false sense of happiness, nor the prarabdha has given that false sense of suffering. The prarabdha has simply become a tool to advance in Krishna consciousness. So that's how prarabdha is nullified in the practice of devotional service. When one practices pure devotional service, one's prarabdha gets nullified. So how it gets nullified? It simply gets nullified because it does not produce the expected result of that prarabdha. Rather, it simply becomes a tool to progress in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, prarabdha is nullified. But at the same time, the bodily experiences, they simply keep manifesting according to the will of the Lord. As long as we carry this body, then these experiences have to manifest. Okay, please read.
We must therefore carry out our duties of varnashram dharma, like bulls obliged to move according to the direction of a driver pulling on ropes knotted to their noses.
So here Brahma gives a very powerful example. Okay, please read the purport also.
There is some controversy about this. However, because some say that since one receives the body according to the guna and karma of his past life, it is one's birth that determines his social status. Others say, however, that one's birth according to the guna and karma of his past life is not the essential consideration, since one can change his guna and karma even in this life. Thus, they say that the four divisions of social order, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, should be arranged according to the guna and karma of this life. This version is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam by Narada Muni. While instructing Maharaj Yudhishthir about the symptoms of guna and karma, Narada Muni said that these symptoms must govern the division of society. All of human society is meant to worship Lord Vishnu. At the present moment, however, human society does that this is the ultimate goal or perfection of life. The goal of life is to reach Vishnu, but instead of reaching Vishnu, people are bewildered by the external manifestation of the material energy. Therefore, progress in material advancement is blind, and leaders of such material advancement are also blind. They are leading their followers in the wrong way. In accordance with those injunctions, everyone should find out whether he is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, and should thus be educated accordingly. Then his life will be successful. Otherwise, all of human society will be confused. It is not that Brahmanas will be elevated to the transcendental platform. It is not that Brahmanas will be elevated to the transcendental platform, but not the Shudras. The example cited in this verse is that the bulls tied by ropes in their nostrils move according to the direction of the driver. Similarly, if we move according to the instructions of the Vedas, the perfect paths of our lives will be set. Otherwise, if we do not move in that way, but act according to our whimsical ideas, our lives will be spoiled by confusion and will end in despair. We must therefore accept this instruction of Lord Brahma to Priyavrat as the factual scientific direction leading to the success of life.
So Prabhupada elaborately explains the importance of accepting varnashrama and also accepting the duties or classifying the person according to his present guna and karma, which he actually displays in this lifetime. Because it is seen that by training, one can actually become Brahmana, or one can actually become whatever by training. One can be properly trained. So Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita that one should be trained to live in mode of goodness. He says it's possible to train one to live in mode of goodness. So therefore, Varnashrama should be utilized properly in Krishna consciousness. It should not be just, we should not think, oh, Varnashrama is very difficult, or Varnashrama is only meant for growing some vegetables and grains in the farm. These are all wrong conceptions. Varnashrama can be utilized wherever we are, whether we are in city or whether we are in the village or whether in our town, doesn't matter. Because Varnashrama deals with the principles and duties, so that principles and duties can be accepted anywhere. Anywhere a person who is a Grahastha is meant to be charitable. That's very nature of Grahastha ashram, that he has to be charitable. If Grahastha is not charitable, then he is considered fallen. So that doesn't mean that only Grahasthas in the village they should be charitable. The Grahasthas in city they need not be charitable. So that's how everything is. That whatever are the principles of Varnashram, they can be utilized everywhere, because a society cannot function without Varnashram. Only thing is that there could be proper trained functioning of Varnashram, or right now as we see, there could be demoniac display of Varnashram, which is that everybody is trying to do everybody else's work, and all of them are Shudras in Kali Yuga. And within those Shudra category, again we see everybody is trying to do everybody's work. Like the Brahmanas are trying to do Vaishya's work, the government is trying to do business instead of simply governing and collecting tax. The Vaishyas are getting into governance, and they are advising the governments that what kind of policies they should make, what kind of laws they should have in order to govern the society. The Brahmanas have simply become controlled by the Vaishyas, who actually pay them money to do whatever they want. And they are simply leading the world according to the direction of these demoniac Vaishyas, who are actually Shudras. Because Vaishyas are supposed to do business with cow and agriculture and natural resources. Instead of that, they are simply doing business now with wine, women, and meat eating, and all sorts of sinful things, which are meant for sinful enjoyment. So they have become Vaishyas, and the industries themselves have become greatly sinful, like the slaughterhouses or the prostitution. They all like become big industry, and they are all sinful industries. So therefore, the whole situation is surcharged with nescience. So that's why Prabhupada says that it is essential to understand the principles of Varnashram and move our life according to the Vedas. If we don't do that, Prabhupada says that the whole life will be spoiled by confusion and end in despair, which we can see in Kali Yuga, modern time is happening. One must therefore remain situated as he is and be conducted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, exactly as a blind man is led by a person who has eyes with which to see. A very powerful example here is given. So please read the purport.
Since we cannot avoid the plan of the Supreme Godhead, we must agree to be directed by him, just as a blind man is led by a person who has eyes. Under any circumstances, if we remain in the condition allotted to us by the Supreme Lord and follow his instructions, we will become perfect. This process of surrendering by following the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not meant for any particular caste or creed. A Brahmana can surrender, and so can a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Everyone can adopt this process. The previous verse has given the analogy of bulls moving under the direction of the driver of a bullock cart. The bulls, being completely surrendered to the driver, remain wherever he wants to place them and eat whatever he wants them to eat. Similarly, being completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we should not aspire for happiness or regret distress. We must be satisfied with the position allotted to us by the Lord. In conclusion, therefore, we must be satisfied in whatever position we have been put into by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. and we should try to engage ourselves in his devotional service. Then our lives will be successful.
So it's a very important analogy which is given here by Brahma. So suppose there's a blind man and there is a man who can actually who has eyesight. The man who has eyesight is actually leading the blind man. And suppose, let us say, they are actually walking through a very hot road, and then the blind man is very inconvenienced with the heat. So he is asking the man who is leading him, is there shade on the path? Then the man who is leading him says, yes, there is shade on the path. Then the blind man tells him, oh, you're a rascal. You're taking me through such a hot sun. Why can't you take me through the shade? Then the blind man is not very intelligent, because he is not able to see what is there in the shade. Even though there may be shade, the path in which the shade is there, it may not be fit for walking. So therefore, the man who is able to see, he is actually not taking him through the shade. He is actually taking him through the heat, or the path which is exposed to sunlight. Even though the blind man is inconvenienced, but he is still able to walk. So therefore, sometimes whimsically we think that Krishna actually should give us some different experience instead of the particular experience which Krishna is currently giving us. So this is like a blind man scolding a man who has eyesight and who is able to see which path is better to walk. So whatever path which Krishna has destined for us, that is the best path for us to walk. Even though we may actually experience inconveniences in that path, but still that is the best path for us to walk. We should simply walk in that path. If we tell that, oh Krishna, what kind of experience you are giving me? You're giving me some nonsense experience. This is not good for me. Why don't you give me a different type of experience which actually is good for me? Then it is like a blind man scolding a man with eyesight who is actually leading him in the right path. So what is the best way? Prabhupada actually says the best way is to surrender to the Lord, and we should simply be satisfied with whatever position the Lord has put us in. We should be satisfied, and we should try to practice Krishna consciousness within that particular situation. Then whatever is our desire will all be known. The Lord knows our desire, and then everything will manifest in the right time, or it may happen according to the Lord's will. Therefore, the analogy which Brahma gives is a very powerful analogy. Both the analogy of the bull and also the analogy of the blind man being led by a person with eyesight. The Lord is with eyesight, so He has actually made our path, and that path is the best path for us to progress further in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, that path has to be accepted without complaining. So now the Lord is actually forming the path for Priyavrata, the path of family life. So Brahma is telling him that if you actually complain that, oh, my father, what kind of proposal he is giving, this proposal is not good, then that means you're actually finding fault with the Supreme Lord, that this, as a blind man, finds faults with a person with eyesight who is actually leading him. So you may think that this path is unfavorable for you. You may think that this path may cause fall down for you, but you really don't know what is in store for you in the path which you are taking. That may be, which if you whimsically take that path, it may be more dangerous than the path which the Lord is offering you. So one should simply accept whatever is offered by the Lord. That's intelligence, and one should not simply accept it alone, but one should utilize that to progress in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada says that we should try to engage ourselves in devotional service. We must be satisfied in whatever position we have been put into by the Supreme Lord, and we should try to engage ourselves in devotional service. Then our lives will be successful. Okay. Without misconception, however, he regards his enjoyment and suffering due to that karma the way an awakened person regards the dream when he had sleeping. He thus remains steadfast and never works to achieve another material body under the influence of three modes of material nature. Again, a very, very powerful example he gives. and person is in dream, he may actually find that he is being chased by a tiger. But that chasing of the tiger is not true because it's just happening in the dream. So when the person awakens, then he sees that there is no tiger. He sees that there is no tiger. And so therefore, he is pacified that there is no tiger. But his body may be reacting to the dream still, and he may have some sweating or palpitation or whatever it is which his body may be going through. He simply tolerates that. Because that's the effect of his dream. He simply tolerates that. But at the same time, he has come out of the dream. So therefore, he is not affected by the dream. He himself is not affected by the dream. He remains steadfast. And he understands that simply getting into such dreams is useless. So therefore, he tries to be in a properly awakened situation instead of simply starting to sleep again and then enter into the dream to see, okay, what happened to the tiger? Did the tiger go away, or the tiger still is there? Instead of trying to enter and continue the dream, he simply wakes up, goes through the effect of the body which is having the effect of the dream, and then remains steadfast. So that's what Brahma is telling Devata, that whatever is the enjoyment or suffering which the Lord is awarding to you, one may look at it as enjoyment, the other may look at it as suffering. Whatever is the Lord awarding to you, simply accept it. But don't get entangled in it. Simply remain detached, go through what you have to go through, and then in the end you will be successful. Okay. Please read.
Priyavrata might have thought that although a conditioned soul is forced to act according to the laws of nature, why should he, who was far advanced in spiritual understanding, accept the same kind of bondage and impediments to spiritual advancement? To answer this doubt, Lord Brahma informed him that even those who are liberated do not present accept in the present body the results of their past activities. While sleeping, one dreams many unreal things, but when he awakens, he disregards them and makes progress in factual life. Similarly, a liberated person, one who has completely understood that he is not the body but a spirit soul, disregards past activities performed in ignorance and performs his present activities in such a way that they produce no reactions. A liberated person, therefore, does not think about whatever he has ignorantly done in the past. Instead, he acts in such a way that he will not produce another body by creative activities. As clearly mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, regardless of what we have done in our past lives, if we engage ourselves in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord in this life, we will always be situated in the Brahma Bhuta state, free from reactions, and will not be obliged to accept another material body.
Okay, so that's what Prabhupada explains here, that we should simply accept what is given by the Lord, and then Brahma brings up another proposal which is very, very interesting. He thinks that, okay, if you think that that forest is the best place for you, you can remain in the forest. If you go to family life, your senses will get disturbed. Then you are having senses which are prone for disturbance. So therefore, you are already having 6 co-wives, which is the mind and the 5 knowledge gathering senses, the Gyanendriya, 6 co-wives. So every person is living with 6 co-wives, the mind and the knowledge gathering senses. They can disturb you in any place. So therefore, why not regulate it in a proper way, and then overcome the disturbance and then become free. Why not do it? So that is his next proposal. Okay, so Prabhupada actually elaborates that argument. Okay, please read.
Even householder life, however, cannot harm a self-satisfied learned man who has conquered his senses. For one who has not controlled his senses, going to the forest to become a so-called yogi is meaningless. Because his uncontrolled mind and senses are going with him, he cannot achieve anything, even by giving up household life and staying in the forest. Our first concern, therefore, should be to control the senses, and since the senses cannot be controlled unless engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, our most important duty is to engage the senses in devotional service. Herein, Lord Brahma indicates that instead of going to the forest with uncontrolled senses, it is better and more secure to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. The sense organs are certainly our greatest enemies, and they are therefore compared to venomous serpents. However, if a venomous serpent is bereft of its poison fangs, it is no longer fearful. Similarly, if the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, there is no need to fear their activities. The devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement move within this material world, but because the senses are fully engaged in the service of the Lord, they are always aloof from the material world. They are always living in a transcendental position.
Yeah. So now the question Brahma is asking is that if you have controlled senses, then living in forest or living in family life is same for you, because your senses are controlled. You live in forest, your senses are controlled. You live in family life, your senses are controlled. If your senses are not controlled, then what is the use of living in forest? Because anyway your senses are not controlled. If not today, tomorrow they will run away. They will go bereft, and then you will have a problem with the senses. So therefore, better you live in the family life and try to control your senses properly, where there is some regulation of senses and regulation of sense control. Of course, this concept will be prominently explained or prominently seen in Maharaja Bharata's pastime, where he actually gives up everything, but he gets dragged towards the young deer whom he saved simply by his mind, and then he has to get into a body of an animal. So the extraordinary display of this concept will be seen in Maharaj Bharata's pastime. So in one sense, whatever is being discussed here in the beginning of the fifth canto is like a prelude to the discussion of the entire canto, that what happens. Because the conditioned soul, simply by his own sensory foolishness, drags himself to hell, just like the uncontrolled senses, what it can do to the conditioned soul. He simply drags himself to hell. Even though there are many choices of heavenly enjoyment within the material world itself, which are offered to people of piety, the conditioned soul gets attracted to, due to uncontrolled senses, he simply gets attracted to some hellish type of enjoyment or sinful enjoyment. And then he drags himself to hellish condition. So all these conditions are described in the fifth canto, that the conditions of enjoyment and the conditions of suffering. But ultimately, all of them are cause of suffering, because they have no way, or they don't provide any opportunity for one to properly control the senses. So the real control of senses comes by devotional service. So therefore, in all these different places of enjoyment, which you will see in the fifth canto, everyone is simply hammering the same point. Please do devotional service. Don't try to come here. Don't try to get attracted to this place. Don't become a tourist here. Don't become a resident here. Just simply do devotional service and just get lost from this whole place, whole material world. Don't get into this business of entering into better situation or worse situation, because every situation is simply worse, because each and every situation will simply degrade us at some point of time. So that's a very powerful concept which will be dealt with throughout the fifth canto. So this discussion, even though it is It is particular to Priyavrata. But the essence of this discussion will be seen, that this essence of this philosophical discussion will be seen throughout the fifth canto, because these discussions between Brahma and Priyavrata, they are essentially discussing the impetus and karma vasana, and the effect of such impetus and karma vasana, and the method to overcome such impetus and karma vasana. So all these things are discussed. This will be again and again elaborated in various ways in the fifth canto. Okay, please read. Nobody is reading.
Sorry.
One who is situated in household life and who systematically conquers his mind and five sense organs is like a king in his fortress who conquers the powerful enemies. After one has been trained in household life, his lusty desires have been decreased. He can move anywhere without danger. Before entering the household life, Grahastha Ashrama, a student should be fully trained to become Jitendriya, or conqueror of senses. A mature student is allowed to become householder because he was first trained in conquering the senses. He retires from household life and then becomes Vanaprastha as soon as a strong wave of youthful life has passed, and he reaches the verge of old age at 50 years or slightly more. Then after being further trained, he accepts sannyasa. He is fully learned and renounced person who can move anywhere and everywhere without fear of being captivated by material desire. As a king in a strong fortress can conquer powerful enemies, so a householder Grahastha ashram, household life, can conquer lusty desires of youth and be secured when he takes Vanaprastha and sannyasa. So that's the whole point, that you situate yourself in the fortress and then you protect yourself nicely. That's what Brahma is telling him. And then Brahma actually explains him what is the fortress. Tvam tva abjanabhandri saroja kosha durga shrito nirjita sapatnaha. So Brahma is saying that the fortress is the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. That's the fortress. The devotional service is the fortress. One should simply surrender to devotional service. That's the fortress. And then finally he says, accept material enjoyment because the Lord has extraordinarily ordered you to do this. Thus you will always be liberated from material association and be able to carry out the orders of the Lord in the constitutional position. It's a very important thing that Brahma actually gives him benediction, that he will remain undisturbed by material enjoyment or the show of material enjoyment. Because by taking firm shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, one can actually overcome the dragging of lust, the sensory activities, because the senses get purified in the practice of devotional service. Okay, read the purport.
There are three kinds of men within this material world. Those who are trying to enjoy the senses to the utmost are called karmis. Above them are the jnanis, who try to conquer the urges of the senses, and above them are the yogis, who have already conquered the senses. None of them, however, are situated in a transcendental position. Only devotees who belong to none of the above-mentioned groups are transcendental. When a bumblebee enters the opening of a lotus flower and drinks its honey, it is fully protected by the petals of the lotus. The bee is undisturbed by sunshine and other external influences. Similarly, one who always seeks shelter at the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead is protected from all dangers. Na tesham. Therefore, Lord Brahma advised Priyavrata, be situated in your original position as an eternal servant of the Lord. If you carry out his orders, you will never fall, even in the midst of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment achieved by dint of one's fruitive activities differs from material enjoyment given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee sometimes appears to be in a very opulent position, but he accepts that position to follow the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee is never affected by material influences. The devotees in the Krishna conscious movement are preaching all over the world in accordance with the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They have to meet many karmis, but by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are unaffected by material influences.
This is Prabhupada's benediction to us, that he actually gave us this benediction. We can be unaffected by mental influences in our preaching duties. So here Prabhupada gives a very nice example that the bee actually sucking the honey in the lotus, it's covered by the protection which is offered by the petals of the lotus. Same way, by engaging in devotional service, will be protected by the Supreme Lord. And this Bhagavata verse is quoted, Samashate Pada Pallava Plavam Mahatpadam Punyesho Murare, Vambuder Vatsapadam Param Padam 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 Na Tesham. The word Na Tesham is very important here because the nature of the material world is Padam Padam Irvipadam, that in every step there is danger. But the devotees, they do not care for it, Na Tesham. They do not look at it because their focus is at the Lord's lotus feet. Their focus is not at the danger of this material world. They understand the nature of material world. They understand that the material world is a very dangerous place. But instead of depending on their own effort to protect themselves from this danger, they have chosen a unique method to protect themselves from the danger. That unique method is taking the protection of the Lord's lotus feet. So therefore, Brahma is telling that you just focus on devotional service and you will be all right. So this way, Brahma resolved the contradiction or the issue which was brought forward by Priyavrata. And then Sukadeva Goswami is actually giving the conclusion. He says that Priyavrata actually accepted the order of Brahma. Okay, please read the purport.
The duty of a great devotee is to carry out the order of the spiritual master, or the spiritual master, or the spiritual master of the spiritual master in the parampara system. A devotee of the Lord always considers himself a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord.
So the orders of our parampara is actually on us, is on our head. We should carry out the orders of our parampara. And then it's very important that Priyavrata and Narada also looked upon Brahma with no tinge of resentment. So that's very, very important because, okay, please read this.
Narada was not at all sorry that he had been frustrated in making Priyavrata a disciple. Both Priyavrata and Narada were exalted personalities who knew how to respect Lord Brahma. Therefore, instead of looking upon Lord Brahma with resentment, they very feelingly offered him their respect.
So it's very important. Prabhupada actually brings up a very, very important concept. Sometimes we may be frustrated in our attempts to serve, especially when we are part of an institution. We may have different opportunities to serve, and sometimes we may also face different frustrations in our opportunity to serve the movement. We may have different plans, we may have different ideas, and then not everything will work out. Some things may work out, some things may not work out. Sometimes devotees themselves may be impediment to whatever service we want to sincerely offer due to some various reasons. So different things may happen in the course of serving the institution. But one should never resent, or one should never give way for resentment in our heart. Our heart should always be clean. Later, the importance of this will be explained because the devotee's heart is meant to be the place of pastime of the Supreme Lord. So, where there is bitterness in heart, where there is resentment, then the Lord cannot reside. Only bitterness resides. So, especially living in an institution or serving in an institution, it's a very important instruction to us which Priyavrata and Narada are giving, they were not frustrated out of short practice. We may come to ISKCON, even if we consider that we are born in the moment, which many of us are not. We just took up to Krishna consciousness. Even if we consider that somebody is born in the moment, then one may practice Krishna consciousness for 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, whatever it is. But here is Priyavrata, who actually practiced Naishtika Brahmacharya under a great personality for many generations of devotees. We saw that Uttarnapath came, Uttarnapath went, Dhruva came, Dhruva went, and so many after that. Then Dhruva's descendants, then Parshinabarhi, then Prechatas, then so many generations have passed, where for such a long time, unbroken vow of Brahmacharya, Priyavrata was practicing. And Brahma just comes and just breaks it. And then he tells Priyavrata, just go and accept rulership of this universe, get married. Even though Priyavrata has his own reservations about the topic, but when Brahma sufficiently instructs him, then Priyavrata's heart becomes clean. So he simply accepts it happily. And Narada also, he's not frustrated. He's not thinking, oh, I had invested so much into this new bhakta, and I had such a long new bhakta training program, and now he's simply being taken away by another temple president for his own work. So what is the use of my training? This fellow has run away from me. That doesn't think like that. Just simply without resentment, he accepts the order of Brahma. It's a very important topic for us. It's a very important point for us, especially serving an institution. We should realize that sometimes we may be impeded in our service. Sometimes we may be unfavorably, or we may consider that we have been treated unfavorably, or we may be treated not in a certain, in a proper manner, or whatever. There may be something which always something keeps happening in an institution. While we have to do what we have to do, like Priyavrata, he did the right thing. He actually asked pertinent questions and he got clarification. Narada did the right thing. He actually obeyed the authority of his father, who is Brahma, and let Priyavrata go. But we have to do what we have to do. But at the same time, we should not have resentment in heart. That's not good. And then, with the permission of great sage Narada, he delivered to his son the governmental responsibility of maintaining and protecting all the planets of the universe. Now, this is also another very nice thing which we see, that Swayambhu Manu actually, he had come to persuade Priyavrata. Narada had differed in the opinion with Swayambhu Manu, and Priyavrata had a different opinion. But finally, Swayambhu Manu's opinion prevailed. So Swayambhu Manu did not ignore the authority of Narada. He actually followed proper etiquette. He asked Narada's blessings and permission before actually taking away his son for whatever duty which he's going to offer him. So he did not say, "Arey, you are telling something, but Brahma has come and given me the power. So now Narada, you just go away. I'm going to take my son." He did not do that. He took permission of Narada. He took Narada's blessing. So we can see in this pastime that even though each of them have different opinions, but they all deal with each other with great respect, and they all respect each other's authority. So this is something which we need to learn, because in an institution, not every time we all may have the same opinion. We may have different opinions. We may have strongly different opinions, just like Narada and Swayambhu Manu, they had strongly different opinions. We may have doubts about what our superiors want us to do, just like Priyavrata had doubts about what Swayambhu was telling him to do. All these things are quite possible, but at the same time, we should be very respectful to each other, and we should always work without resentment, and we should accept and be satisfied whatever has been ultimately ordered by the Supreme Lord. These are all very important lessons, not only for Priyavrata, but for our own practice of Krishna consciousness, especially within an institutional setup. These things have happened. These things can happen. So we should take these lessons very nicely. Swayambhu Manu was practically hopeless because such a great personality of Narada was instructing his son Priyavrata not to accept household life. Another significant statement is Swayambhu Manu took great satisfaction from abnegating the responsibility of ruling all planetary systems of the universe. At the present, politicians are very eager to take charge of government, and then they engage their men in conversing door to door to get votes to win the post of president or some exalted office. Manu wanted to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, when his son Priyavrata took charge of the worldly affairs, he was very relieved. This is a system of Vedic civilization. At the end of life, one must free oneself from worldly affairs and completely engage in the service of the Lord. Manu entrusted the government to his son with the permission of great Saint Narada. This is particularly mentioned because although Narada wanted Priyavrata to become free from material affairs, when Priyavrata took charge of the universe at the request of Brahma and Manu, Narada was also very pleased. So that's how the pastime is. It's a very important pastime. And this pastime actually gives us a lot of lessons for our practical Krishna consciousness. Okay, I'm seeing that there are two hands up. This, the Mataji's, Shamagopika Mataji and Atharanga Tulasi. We have something to share.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I have two questions.
Okay.
One was from the bumblebee analogy given.
Yeah.
We have that, this analogy is very nice, that the bumblebee is sitting inside and because of the shade of the lotus petals, it is able to relish the honey. But there is one more similar analogy I've heard, that the bumblebee gets in and he gets stuck. He is enjoying the nectar and the lotus closes when the sun is gone and he dies inside.
Yeah. So
So
analogies are simply to be utilized to understand what we cannot understand by what we can actually observe. That's it. The analogies have their own limitation. So sometimes the same analogy can be utilized to actually show two different things. So there, the bumblebee is considered as a sense enjoyer, and the lotus is actually considered as the prison or the sensory activities which actually cause death. But here, the lotus is compared to the protection which is offered by the Lord. So then the comparisons are different. So the result is also different. Yeah.
thank you, brother. And my second question was, second question was that we see that Narada is having a different view, spiritual master, his father Brahma is having a different view. They both are instructing Priyavrata. But Priyavrata did not even ask any question or he didn't clarify anything. He immediately accepted what Brahma said. How could Priyavrata make this?
No, previously he asked the question. Actually, this was covered in the verse which was which actually causes Brahma to appear. So in the beginning of the verses, it's actually asked that he actually asked Swayambhu Manu that why should I accept this? So he did ask. So the question was asked by Priyavrata. And then Swayambhu Manu was not able to convince Priyavrata. He was not able to give convincing answer to Priyavrata. And then Narada appeared because Narada saw that there is some trouble. So he had to go there himself. So he appeared to actually clarify. So it's not that Priyavrata did ask the question. Priyavrata asked the question. There was, even though it is the whole conversation is not fully reported, but there was some conversation which is there, which actually happened between Priyavrata and Swayambhu Manu. Krishnacharya Thakur actually raises these questions. In his explanation, he actually raises these questions of Priyavrata. And Narada, anticipating those questions, actually deals with each one of them. So, Brahma. He systematically explains everything to Priyavrata, that Priyavrata has no need for asking any question, because that's the nature of spiritual master. The spiritual master understands
Thank you. Thank you.
Prem Gausala Prabhu, you had your hand.
My hand earlier, I forgot to lower it down.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Okay. Anyway, so our time is up. We finished on time. The number of slokas which we had to finish. So we'll see next Monday. Hare Krishna. If you have some questions on this section, we can deal in the next class, because next section is little light. It just explains the activities of Devotee. So if you have some questions left, we can definitely discuss in the next section. Okay, let's stop here. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada.
Jai.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.